Guys, we have to get back home. We're late for the podcast. Does anyone happen to know the way?
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me just grab this rock.
Little
magic. Turn into a bird. Follow the bird.
The bird's going towards a volcano.
Don't follow the bird.
All right.
Follow the river.
Yeah, maybe we'll just follow the river. We'll do that. Does anyone else have anything that could be helpful? I mean, Kathy's been turned into, what are you, a ferret, a muskrat?
I am a muskrat, you idiot!
Okay, apparently she's a muskrat. Yeah, what about those stones you have, Boo? Do you think they'll come in handy?
Out of the way, Puck!
Watch it, big people coming through. Oh, damn daikinis. Yeah, those stones that you have there, Boo, you think they could help us get back?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I can just turn things to stone. It's not really going to tell us which direction to go. Sorry.
What about you, Mad Myles again? You able to help us somehow?
Yeah. Why don't you just...
Follow the river.
Follow the river. Let's follow the river.
Yeah,
follow the river.
I think it's gonna work.
That way!
No, that way!
No, just that way!
No, it's that way!
Oh, we should have planned that.
This is Jpar, and you are listening to the We Promise Nothing show. This week on the show, we have Myles, we have Lipp, and we have Da Boo. Before we get things started, I'd like to remind everyone that the music you hear on the show is brought to you by SoundsLikeAnEarful.com. If you need great music for your podcast, check them out. SoundsLikeAnEarful.com. Now this week, we review a great classic. It is Willow, a movie from the 80s, written by George Lucas, directed by Ron Howard, came out in 1988. This was a tremendous movie. I saw it in a theater when I was younger. But before we get into that, let's say hello to the crowd, everybody.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Hey, guys.
Lipp, you're in today's episode. Are you going to speak?
Hey everybody, this is Lipp.
Thank you.
Also the only one who introduced himself. Sucker punch to the other two.
Well, all of us have very recognizable voices there, Lipp, so sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Flint Cole.
You're welcome.
So we're reviewing the 1988 movie, written by George Lucas. And the screenplay was written by Bob Dolman, stars Val Kilmer, Joanne Whalley, and Warwick Davis as the title character, Willow. So this is an epic fantasy adventure that was done back in the 80s. It's about Actually, I didn't write a synopsis here. We promised nothing. It's about a baby,
You know.
you know. Those kinds of babies.
Little human?
Oh, boy. So a baby girl is discovered in a river by Rannon and Mims, the children of Willow Offgood. That's a little more info that I needed, but sure. A dwarf farmer. That's not true. This is a terrible synopsis. He's not dwarf. What do they call them? They call them elfwins or something, right?
They're not elves, but they're gnomes. They're gnomes.
They're not elves, but they call them elwins or something like that. Anyways, so it's 1988. And, okay, so let's start from the beginning here. Warwick Davis and his children find a daikini baby, which is us. We're humans. We're the humans. They call us daikinis. They're called Alwins? Elwins?
Aldwins,
okay. So they're kind of like hobbits.
They're halflings, right?
They're halflings, basically, is what they are. Mm-hmm. And they find a baby, and she's supposed to fulfill this prophecy of killing a tyrannical queen, and the tyrannical queen is basically obsessed and looking for this baby, and the baby has the birthmark on them. Then they are the one that's potentially going to destroy her rule. So she's using all her resources to destroy this baby. At the very beginning, they do find this baby. Her mother and a midwife plan the baby's escape, and which basically sends the baby down a river, which is found by these hobbit-like creatures, played by Warwick Davis. And it's actually this movie, which is interesting. It's the largest casting of little people, according to Warwick Davis. The largest open casting call.
Well, they had a full village of halflings.
I know, it was amazing. So here we go. The film had the largest ever casting call for little people at the time, with between 225 and 240 actors hired for the film.
They're actually called nelwyns. I don't know if you...
I don't know what they're called. I don't know what they're actually called. Apparently, Nelwyns. Thank you.
Nelwyns. Oh.
Nelwyns.
They got a weird name.
Nelwyns.
But, as everyone knows who's ever seen this movie...
They're halflings, that's what they are.
Yeah, but what do they call them in the movie?
Nelwyns.
No, Peck!
Oh.
Out of the way, Peck! They call them Pecks, which is basically slang for the Elwins. So I guess calling... hobbits, calling them halflings, kind of like slang, you know? Or calling a goblin an orc. Anyways, I'm going to read off the facts and trivia. The box office receipts were less than expected, so writer George Lucas continued Willow's story in books rather than in movie sequels, when this I did not know. The three books are collectively known as the Chronicles of the Shadow War, and share a writer's credit for Chris Claremont and Lucas. They are Shadow Moon, 1995, Shadow Dawn, 1996, and Shadow Star, 2000. So I, myself, am definitely going to check those out.
Yeah, same here.
George Lucas specifically wrote this film for Warwick Davis after meeting him on the set of Return of the Jedi.
Interesting fact, the devil dogs were actually Rottweilers.
Yes.
In rubber masks
Thank
and
you.
suits.
They were vicious.
Although you could kind of tell they were dogs. But.
Yeah.
And this was the first feature film to use the quote-unquote morphing process developed by Industrial Light and Magic. Madmartigan and Sorcerer, they had a bigger backstory, but it wasn't shown here. It was actually cut out from the movie. But apparently it was left in the Marvel Comics miniseries adaptation.
In the Marvel comics?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the large group of pigs outside the castle continuously tried mating. Buckets of cold water were used to separate them. According to the press kits and subsequent novels, the two-headed dragon was named Eborsisk, a reference to the movie critics Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. The word does not occur in the film, but it made it into some reviews. And also, the character of the evil General Kale is said to be named after the film critic Pauline Kael. So that's some funny stuff from the, the writers there. After meeting on the set of the film, Val Kilmer and Joanne Whalley were married and later divorced. Blackroot is actually vanilla, just so y'all know. I was always wondering. I thought it was like some sort of tobacco of some kind.
He was just trying to give it to the baby. But
Yeah.
They made it seem like alcohol.
Well, I thought it was like a tobacco or some kind the way they made it, right? This is interesting. Warwick Davis was only 17 years old during the shooting. Warwick Davis wore a wig for the movie. The long hair is not his own.
Well, he looks very young in it, but I wouldn't have guessed 17. That's very young.
Neither have I. The 6-month-old twins playing Alora Dannon were too young to have a full head of hair. They wear a wig, which was applied using syrup, as normal wig adhesive would be too harsh for the baby's skin.
Man, that baby had some great facial.
I know that kid. Like, you always say like, "Oh, the cutest kid ever." It's like, no, this is the cutest kid ever. This baby was adorable, and just the expressions, like,
how it can raise its eyebrows. I don't know how long it took to get half of those shots, but they nailed it with those kids' expressions.
I love the fact that this particular baby, that as we point out, has more expressive talent than some other actors who are full-grown adults, for crying out loud.
Absolutely.
Oh, calling out Twilight.
And Kenny Baker, who has recently left us, played a Nelwyn musician as did his longtime comedy partner Jack Purvis. Right? He passed away recently? Kenny Baker, who played R2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kenny Baker played of R2, who played R2-D2 in the Star Wars movies. And the Wilhelm scream, you're asking me about this one, Myles. It was heard 3 times in the movies, not twice. So good ear that you picked up twice, but it was actually used one more time, apparently.
This is what? Sorry, I missed that.
The Wilhelm scream, which is something we discussed in a previous episode. I believe it was actually Indiana Jones we talked about it. How it was the most used sound effect in Hollywood.
Yes.
And there's a continuity error that involves the magic acorns. Willow was given by the High Aldwin. During an interview with the Empire podcast, Warwick Davis explained that in a scene near the end of the film, he throws a second acorn and is inexplicably out after having only used 2 of the 3 magic acorns he had been given earlier in the film. Included in the Blu-ray release is the cutscene in which Willow uses an acorn, which is a second, in a boat during a storm and accidentally turns the boat to stone. Davis says that his hair is wet in the next scene that did make it into the original version of the film. The acorn is never referenced. And that's it for your facts and trivia for Willow. Alright, so, Lipp, this is your first time seeing this movie.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us your first impressions?
Well, I was, first time seeing it, actually really surprised. I didn't know George Lucas actually ever did a fantasy, Lords of the Ring kind of movie, and I was actually really impressed. A lot of the scenes did remind me of, there's a chase scene actually, reminds me a lot of Indiana Jones, just the way it's filmed and shot. But it's all around, it impressed me. It really did. I didn't really know what to expect coming into this movie. You guys kind of actually, a lot of people were hyping it up quite a bit, but it lived up to it. It's really good. Starts off a little slow, but honestly, I find once they kind of get to like the little chase or whatever, the movie does not stop. Full pack action, just go, go, go.
Yeah, it's definitely in the vein of a Star Wars or an Indiana Jones. And like you said, it's very much inspired by Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, some of the movies, or some of the music reminds me just like Star Wars, but with a fantasy kind of twist on it. A lot of the music seems straight out of LucasArts and stuff. You know, very George Lucasy.
And some of you might be saying, "Well, that's not right, Jpar, because Lord of the Rings came out way after this movie, which came out in 1988. Well, I'm actually talking about the stories in the books.
Yes.
Talking about those stories written by Tolkien. You could tell that George Lucas definitely was influenced by that, especially with the lead characters being so Hobbit-like.
I want to say Dungeons and Dragons also.
Well, I would say that too.
This.
Dungeons and Dragons also did influence. I would say that as well.
Even with the brownies, at least. I know Myles hates the name brownies, but that's a original monster, I believe, in the original Dungeons and Dragons monster manual.
Fact check.
I'm pretty confident in that.
Okay.
No need
But
to
sure,
fact
fact check that, Kathy.
I actually am wondering if this movie came out after the Lord of the Rings animated movie. Because remember how that came out way before? I just don't know the differences in age between them. Because I have a feeling that might have inspired it too in some ways. So let's face it, Lord of the Rings is very much fictitious lore just written out of thin air, by Tolkien. But at the same time, Lucas clearly was, like you guys said, inspired. But it's a very visual thing, right? So I love the fact that you have the halflings in this case, but he did it in his own way. He had his own terminology.
Definitely, he put his own twist on the story, for sure.
So why do you hate brownies? What's wrong with brownies?
He hates the
They're
name.
a delicious treat, and they shouldn't be used in vain like that. So.
In the brownies are the 2 characters that are even smaller than the Alwyns. The
Smaller than
halfling.
Willow.
Yeah.
Anyways, the halfling type characters that Willow plays, Warwick Davis plays, they're smaller than them, and they work for the fairies, who was kind of like Galadriel a bit. And there's Mad Mardigan, played by Val Kilmer, who plays this rogue who is maybe thief. We don't really get this whole story, like I said. They don't do his backstory, but apparently there was more to it that was taken out of the movie.
The best swordsman in all.
Yes, he claims to be the greatest swordsman in the land, and you're not sure whether to believe him or not, and that's kind of what makes a great character out of him. He's a very Indiana Jones, Han Solo type character in a way. You don't know whether to trust him. Always lying to Willow, because the main quest is to take care of this baby. Willow wants to protect it, and his village folk, they just want it out of there because it's a daikini, it's a human baby, and they know it's trouble because the dogs have already attacked their village. When I first saw this...
You got a little fact check here.
This just in.
Fact check. Lipp did his own fact check. The brownie first appeared in the first edition in the original Monster Manual, 1977.
Boom.
Definitely predates Willow.
Whoa.
Boom! Dropping the facts.
Dungeons and Dragons facts.
All right, so when I first saw this movie in the theater, I was amazed when I was younger, and I just wished there was more movies like this. I was pumped when I saw it because I was a fan of He-Man and Masters of the Universe at the time, and I always wanted to see more movies like this, and I felt like they never ever did it right again until they brought out Lord of the Rings. What were your first impressions of this? When did you see this originally?
I saw it when I was a little kid, and I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and it scared the living crap out of me.
Oh, yeah?
I found it very dark when I was a kid.
It is dark.
The dogs scared me a lot because they're very vicious. When they attack things, it was like...
What about everybody turning into pigs? Like, that scene was actually very...
That was very
That was
graphic.
very
That was a
Yeah,
creepy
that was
scene
dark
for
as
me
well.
when I was a kid, yeah.
Well, you were bringing up that they had some kind of
Very good
kind of new
effects.
form of technology or the morphing,
Morphing.
I think you're referring to. I guess that was something that was of a trademark for its time. It was something that... I forget
Well,
the
now
name.
it's a
It's
trademark. That was the first time they used it,
Like
though.
magic.
Well, I did not know that. That was the kind of the first variation.
Which is
of
another company that was owned by Lucasfilm.
that. Right. That's pretty cool.
So what were your first impressions when you saw this, Boo, when you were younger? Did you see it when you were younger or later?
Yeah,
Or?
this is very much a family movie for us. This was one that I must have seen this over 100 times. This is a movie I literally could quote from beginning to end if I wanted to, but I just love the fact that it's kind of like what everyone's been saying so far. It's pulling variations of different movies that we've already seen, some that we're about to see almost in some ways. But yeah, it's very much a Lucasfilm that you would never put 2 and 2 together to make it seem a Lucasfilm. So I love the fact that it does have the vibe of Indiana Jones and everything else, but in its own way. But I think it's safe to say, I think because it's a dark story, as Myles puts it there, it's that reason alone that I think that the story holds up on its own.
Yeah.
You could rewrite this story as much as you want. It wouldn't be the same. The casting clearly does it. It's its own work, but when we think of the brownies, or we think of the nelwyns, or we think of the daikinis, these are all terms we would never hear or see in some other form other than under different terms, right? Lord of the Rings, you think of elves, you think of orcs, you think of dwarves.
Yeah.
Those are the legitimate things that we know of today, but I love the fact that Lucas had his own thing going.
Well, I think he kind of had to. You can't quite copyright, so he came up with his own names for similar characters from probably Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that.
Even Gulliver's Travels. When
they're tied
Yes,
up.
when they're
the
tied
two
down,
elves.
yeah.
Were tied down. I'm like, oh, he's pulling a lot of references from a lot of folklore. So
Absolutely.
that was pretty interesting to see.
I like that scene too.
Yeah, and then Warwick was like, "Ah!" and all the brothers like, "Ah!" and scream. There's so many great moments in this movie, and I mean, for me, it's just like every time I watch this, and this is a movie I could watch over and over and over again. I love this movie.
Like, a couple things for me jumped out as just George Lucas. The music, like I said,
Yes.
that chase scene was very Indiana Jones-ish.
Yeah.
And Lucas, I don't know what you want to call it, star swipes, but not quite. Just the scene swipes.
Oh,
Yes,
scene transitions.
Scene
Yes.
transitions, some of those were very Lucas-like.
and like I said, Mad Mardigan I felt was a very Indiana Jones kind of Han Solo kind of character.
It's like
Absolutely.
all his movies have to have a scoundrel.
Well, all his good movies. Hey,
Yeah, not to mention a
Old man.
very handsome scoundrel, apparently. They always seem to be bare-chested or something to show that they're, more manly than the average
clearly
scoundrel.
Harrison was busy, so we got Val Kilmer instead.
So is Val Kilmer an attractive man?
Is that what you're trying to say?
Why, are you trying to say that he's not?
I'm just wondering.
Hey, come on, let's be honest. We're talking about a hero in a movie where half the time he's got his shirt wide open, showing a bare chest. Why would he have to do that?
I don't know.
Well, to be... Oh, for crying out loud. You guys are just hitting me into a corner.
Oh, we're putting you in the corner.
Clearly the point is that we're
Wait,
talking
I
about a
don't know.
hero who is not meant to be viewed as the hero, but
Yes.
like Jay puts it, it's an Indiana Jones style of character.
He's a
right?
rogue.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, right. But he
He's
could
a
have also
scoundrel.
he could also look, really dirty and like he was the cleanest looking man in a caged cell I've ever seen in my life.
At first, I thought he had some gross teeth, but then all of a sudden, the next scene, his teeth were pearly white again. I'm like, okay, maybe that was my. I don't know if that was a
You,
continuity
you
thing
didn't
there
see
too.
him wiping his teeth there in the cage, at the beginning of the movie, no?
Well, that was pretty black. I don't know how you get. What was he eating in that cage? That's what we got.
Blackroot, apparently.
Oh, that
Yeah.
blackroot turns your teeth white.
Yeah. But it's actually vanilla, apparently. All right, so do we want to review this and then let's do our favorites and our least favorites, and then we'll give it a rating.
I'll start with you, Myles.
Favorite for me would have to be the stereotypical George Lucas sets and just everything. Like the practical effects are amazing. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings.
This was also, just a side note, also filmed in New Zealand.
Oh, there you go.
Beautiful
So,
landscape.
Peter Jackson, he did all the camera tricks and everything to get normal-sized people to look like halflings. In this movie, they went the full bore, and they actually got little people to play the little people in the movie. So that right there's a practical effect that they didn't have to worry about.
Yep.
They just needed actors, and they ended up being all famous actors. There were so many little people in there that I recognized from future movies.
Well, for instance,
The
the
Warriors.
High Elwyn, he plays Wildor in Masters of the Universe.
Okay, I don't remember that movie. But if you guys have seen Bad Santa, the guy who plays the elf, Tony Cox.
Yes.
Okay, he was one of the warriors.
Yeah, he
Oh,
was. He
yeah,
was.
he
Absolutely.
was.
He looked really familiar. I couldn't
Don't you
place him.
say
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
And then there was Phil Fondacaro. Now, he played in a lot of horror movies. I don't know if you remember him from other movies, but anyways. So that was pretty cool to see the practical stuff. The least favorite for me, and I think it was a favorite for you, Lipp, is you said that it started off slow and then it just hit a pace and then it just kept going the whole way through. I didn't like that. I kind of wish they would have slowed down
A little
and
bit, eh?
a little bit, and just because that's what I really liked about Lord of the Rings is they slowed down and
All
you had
the
all these
walking.
character
Love
developments
the walking, eh?
together. Not so much the walking, but I just like these characters from different origins. You have elves, you have orcs, I guess you don't have orcs, but you have elves, you have men, you have wizards, you have halflings, all together.
Trolls.
Trolls. You have different points of view, different cultures. They all hate each other, but they have to come together. They didn't get that. I didn't get that too much. The daikinis and the nelwyns and the. So for me, the least favorite was the pacing. I wanted it to slow down a little bit because the story kind of got muddled and they threw names out and I didn't really care about those characters anymore. Like Mad Mardigan, whatever his name was, he'd meet up with an old pal and it's like, who is he? Who was he? Who cares? And there you go. Boom.
It's funny that you would view that as a bad thing, though, because I felt like that might have been too much. Because character development, I will never disagree. That's always a great thing. But I don't know. I kind of felt like they had enough screen time to be able to see all that. I will say this, though. That certainly wasn't my least favorite, though, of the movie. I think for me, I'll start with my most favorite. I think for me, my most favorite had to be the brownies. They had to be the one set of characters throughout the entire movie where no matter what they were saying or doing on screen, we knew it was going to be something, quite memorable, which it always turns out to be. So I feel like every line they have in the movie, I could quote once again. So I think that's part of the reason why I feel like this movie had a great humor to it, while the entire story was quite dark, as we had said in the beginning. So I'd say the brownies is my favorite, but least favorite. I think for me it was the fact that it was just borderline too much on. Because we were mentioning how it reminded everyone of like the Indiana Jones elements and Star Wars a little bit here and there. Like we could pull things from each scene and say, oh, that's very Star Wars-ish, or that's very much Indiana Jones-ish. I didn't like the fact that I could start picking at those scenes the more we started to nail them. I appreciated the fact that it was coming from George Lucas's point of view, but I just didn't like the fact that it was too obvious. I wanted Willow to be very much its own thing. And after all these years, I never really put two and two together until you guys had pointed that out. So I love the fact that only now I'm seeing it, but I'd have to say that's maybe my least favorite part of it.
But you love the brownies, which I mentioned earlier. I find the brownies are essentially R2-D2 and C-3PO. They're the comic relief, the two...
Oh, they're fucking hilarious.
The two comic relief characters of the movie, which I guess is another...
You actually didn't like the brownies at all?
No, I never said that.
Oh.
I like
he's
brownies.
got a look on his face.
You just didn't like the term brownies. And how
Yeah, it was just the term. I felt like they went out of their way to try to make new names for people. Like instead of saying man, they said daikini.
So why not something different than brownie? Is what your whole.
But
point
this is a
right?
different world. You expect them to call everything the same that we do? Like, that's
No.
too much of a coincidence.
No, I think he was trying really hard to not have a contrast with Lord of the Rings, and to me it came
Yeah.
out too strong. It was too much in one direction.
Yeah, you're saying.
All right, I'm gonna start with my least favorite here. Longest child sacrifice scene in my life. That's like, you have no idea how quickly I can sacrifice a child compared to that witch, whatever she is. That to me, that was the only.
That was something I
unplausible-
said while we were watching it, right? Because I think Willow just turns Rizal back to normal, and then they only just start turning the pigs back, all the pigs back to human, all the whole army that was turned to pigs. They already started the sacrifice with the baby. And then by the time they're done turning all the pigs back to human, it's morning.
Yeah.
And then they go back, and they still haven't, okay, like, how long does this sacrifice process take? It took all night, apparently, and they're still not done.
Longest human baby sacrifice I've ever seen. But
So you just preferred to just stab the baby and the movie was done?
Well, I get that the queen had to acquire the baby so they could have this
They
final
could have
big
made up
scene.
something to say why she couldn't have done it that day or something.
Like it had to be at dawn or something.
Yeah.
You know, like I wish they would have mentioned something like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that's probably the only part I really didn't. I was just like, come on now, this is a little inconsistent, as Boo would say. My favorite part. Favorite part's got to be the comedy. I wasn't actually expecting that much and like we did the little scene at the start with the rock, and he throws it up into the bird. Follow the bird.
Follow the bird!
The bird's going back to the village.
Go...
Follow the river.
Follow the bird! Follow the river!
Just a lot of comedy in there, especially even with the brownies.
Yeah.
And just even Val Kilmer dressed as the girl, and there's lots of comedy in this movie, more than I expected.
Yeah, damn, I just really like this movie. But there is something I don't like about it.
Oh.
And it's actually kind of comes with what you're saying. It gets to a point where it gets so good because the action scene just kind of keeps going, and then it gets to that part where they arrive at that kingdom, and then they're all turned to stone, and then the dragon comes out and the trolls and all that. They get to that, and that scene is so good that you just think that the ending is going to be the fucking best. But no, they can't top that scene at the end. And I find the ending scene just doesn't... Because, like you said, the inconsistencies and just... I find the ending scene just isn't as good as the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And even when I was younger, I found that. I was like, oh, this is really good, really good. And you get to the end of your movie, and I'm like, the ending wasn't as good. But damn, the rest of it was still really good. You know? So that's what I always thought about that movie. What I like about it, like almost everything else. I like everything else about this movie. The fact that Lucas is involved in it. The fact that you can notice it with the Indiana Jones and the Star Wars reference stuff. That doesn't bother me. Myles, you're saying that there wasn't enough character development. I think if they would have thrown a couple more extra scenes, then this movie would have been too long. So I like the length of the movie. I'm glad they didn't go that way. I would still like to know more about the characters, because I really like this movie and the characters.
The
but
books.
I think that's what the books would be there for. But I think if they would have added more scenes, I think it would have been too much for the movie. It was kind of like the perfect length.
I believe this is just over 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, there you go. See,
Which,
it would have been
especially,
too long.
this is
Which
in
is
the
long
80s.
back then.
You know, like most movies were an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
Most, that's long for back
this is
then.
before Lord of the Rings, right? Before these long movies.
And they had to tell
Titanic
this
and-
Lord of the Rings type story in this condensed time because they only had the one movie, right? Which I thought they did really well.
Can I throw maybe a neutral point out there? I don't know if this is
Okay.
good or bad. Much like the Force, magic's never really explained in this.
Good. Keep it that way.
Yeah. So I feel like Willow's magic, I don't really know the limits to it, but I also don't, I think one of the first things he does is turn that, he makes that egg and then dragon comes out. Like, that's one of the first things he does. I was like, holy shit, this guy can summon dragons? And stuff like
Are you talking about when he had attacked the
With the wand?
troll, and the troll suddenly kind of peeled its own skin off and
Turned
turned
Yes,
into
it turns into an egg
a two-headed
thing,
dragon-like
and then turns
creature,
into a
whatever.
dragon, yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Siskel
He's not like
Needert or
aware
whatever it
of
is.
he's not aware of his powers yet.
Yeah.
He's not aware of, he can't control it, obviously, because he's trying to transform Rizal, but he can't get her the right form,
I don't
right?
think that's a neutral point. I think that's turned into a negative point.
It might be. The other thing is I didn't understand how, the black evil lady turns everybody into pigs, and then the goat lady gets turned back into a lady. And then she turns everybody back into pigs, and she's like, my magic makes you not turn into pigs again. It's like, oh, that's convenient.
I think what she meant is that she warded the camp.
Warded
Meaning
it,
If there was any further magic to be casted upon them from above,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have worked.
So I never knew where the magic started or ended.
I kind of agree with Jay, though. I kind of feel glad about that, though, because if you go into
similar
too
to
much
Force, maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah. Sometimes not knowing all the details is just enough for like your imagination to take over.
Absolutely. Fill in the blanks.
It's funny that you bring up magic, though, because I always feel like that's part of the reason why they leave it out, because there's very little to explain. You know, for instance, Willow playing with the wand at the campfire, and all of a sudden, 2 seconds later, woo-hoo! He's like, he's up at the tree branch. Mad Mardigan's wondering, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Good night, Willow.
In other words, you got up there, you'll be able to get back.
It's like, you clearly must like sleeping in trees or something. Like his kind must sleeping in trees, I guess is what he thought.
Yeah, but I think as a writer, you have to be very careful with magic. If you make it too strong, all of a sudden it can answer all your problems. Right? It's the answer to every problem. So you need to not have it in that sense. It's very tricky to write magic.
Kind of like the Eagles.
Yes.
How they solve every problem.
All right, so did you want to start off with a rating there, Lipp?
I'm going to give it a solid 3.5 for an older film that impressed me with a lot of special effects and comedy that I'd never seen before.
3.5. Okay, I grew up with this movie. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I could watch it over and over again. I would give it a 4.5.
I'm going to give it a 3.5 as well. The practical effects just kept me coming because I like when they had the two-headed dragon. That reminded me so much of, Jason and the Argonauts, which was a movie series that I really liked when I was younger too. So, practical magic, stereotypical George Lucas practical effects, that got me in. So 3.5.
I'm going to probably land myself right in the middle. I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5. Again, like Jay, I think because I grew up with it, I feel like maybe that's why I can appreciate all the little bits and details that went into it, especially knowing the fact that nowadays we got much better effects. So I can appreciate George Lucas's storytelling in this one even more so. The only reason why it doesn't get as much as a 4.5, I think it's because now that I see it after so many years, I have a tendency of looking at it more critically, and I think I'm probably being overly critical, but I feel that's probably the reason why I can't give it any more than a 4, because there's just a few things that I feel that of now I can probably frown upon, but it's still a great movie, and I'll still rewatch it however many times I need to. So solid 4.
All right, so fairly warm reviews here for
Surprised.
Willow. I'm not surprised at all. It's a great movie, and I mean
This is one of our highest rated movies, I would think.
We've rated higher. I think we've rated higher.
Yeah, but there's usually one person who shits on it. Everybody loved this one.
Everyone liked Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
We've rated higher. Anyways, pretty good reviews for Willow. You should go check it out yourself. It's a great movie from the 80s. It's a nice little gem with great practical effects. One that's not as well known as Indiana Jones or Star Wars out of Lucas's work, but a great piece of work nonetheless. Any final comments, guys?
Yeah, well, if you're at all a fantasy fan, you definitely need to see this movie. If you haven't, you suck.
Apparently I suck.
Don't leave on
but I don't anymore because I just saw it.
You just seen it.
Hoorah! Honestly, this is one I didn't even know about. When you say Lucas, Indiana Jones...
Tell me who guessed the quote from
and Star Wars.
All right, so keep looking on our page for the scenes to name the movie where the scene belongs to. Last week, or I should say 2 weeks ago, it was John Farquhar who guessed the picture for the Kingsman Secret Service. He guessed the full answer on there. He earned himself 3 sweet promise points. Now you might be asking yourself, what are these promise points? Well, they're worth absolutely nothing. But we will say your name on the show, and we're going to keep a score. Megan D is currently sitting with 2, and John Farquhar with 3. Will we be saying your name on the show? That's up to you. Stay tuned to the Facebook page, and we're going to put a new picture up there, and you'll be able to guess that picture to earn yourself some promise points yourself. All right, and as per usual, you can like us on Facebook. You could follow us on Twitter, We Promise Nothing, drop the G. On Instagram, We Promise Nothing with the G. And you can like, share, and subscribe. We really like when you do that. And by the way, this is like a full year for us, guys. This is a full year of We Promise Nothing. So this is pretty much our season finale. We're going to be doing a season premiere. Well, we're going to be doing a new season starting next week, I guess. Yeah, so, woo! If you want to congratulate us or leave a note about that, we would really appreciate that, and we appreciate you guys listening all this time.
1 full year of podcasts. I didn't know if this day would ever come.
No, I didn't think so either. It even feels weird even saying this, so you know. So yeah. Leave a comment below, like, share, subscribe. This is Jpar signing out.
Myles leaving the building.
Da Boo not leaving fast enough.
And this is Lipp. I'm taking off for a while.
And we're gonna miss you, Lipp. And if you're gonna miss Lipp as well, leave your comments below. And also, you can leave a comment below if you don't agree with anything we said today. But there's also one more fact that you should know. We promise nothing. Good night. 1 year.
Maybe I'll try and make it back for a couple.
You'll be back. 1 year. Whoop whoop.
1 year.
1 year. Whoop. 1 year.